I guess it's like those romance novels in the supermarket where they're like set in like, I don't know, pirate times, but it's really just people doing it. Yeah, that's kind of what this is. Hey everybody, my name is Nick. I'm a director and editor living in Taiwan, and today I'm going to be talking about the wild world of Hong Kong's Category 3 erotic sex comedies. So after viewing Viva Erotica, I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I decided to watch a bunch of pervy Hong Kong sex comedies, because Viva Erotica is about making a pervy Hong Kong sex comedy. In Viva Erotica, Shu Qi, who is one of my favorite actresses, kind of reveals this interesting story of hers, that she started in these sex comedies but wanted to become a legitimate actress, and she was able to achieve that goal, which is a really impressive thing. I think it's pretty amazing that she started in this bottom of the barrel kind of low tier movies and was able to work her way up to being this art film darling. I mean, that's a pretty cool rags to riches story. So I thought going back and exploring these old films would be kind of cool. What I found was that a lot of these movies that she was in are very goofy, they're sometimes gross, they're sometimes genuinely funny, sometimes disturbing, but they are unique in that they aren't quite pornography and they also aren't quite comedies. They're in this weird middle ground where, like, when you want to watch sexy stuff but you want to keep this veneer or this charade that you're actually not watching just sexy stuff. You're watching a movie, but it's also not really a movie. I think if you look at it from knowing about Viva Erotica and kind of believe what that movie is trying to say, I do think a lot of these Hong Kong directors that are making these Category 3 films do have aspirations to be legitimate directors. So there's a lot of care and thought put into making these movies have some kind of merit. You can tell they're trying to say something, at least, sort of. The first movie that I watched was a movie called The Fruit is Swelling. And I searched it and found the title because Shu Qi is in it. But she's actually not really in it. She shows up at the beginning in a bathing suit, and she introduces a story, and that's it. And honestly, good for her for not being in this movie. And I'll tell you why. The plot of this movie is that an 8-year-old girl sees how much fun her sister is having with boys and whatnot. And she also keeps coming across sex in the form of porn that her family leaves on the TV, her teacher's talking about it, and she decides that she doesn't like being a kid. She wants to be an adult. So she wishes that she could be older. And just like the movie Big before it, she wakes up in the body of an 18-year-old girl. And this is extremely creepy because when she wakes up in the body of an 8-year-old girl, she's in this weird pervy sex comedy world where people are trying to touch her, and she's also herself tries to seduce her swim teacher, who, as an 8-year-old, she has a crush on. So yeah, a lot to think about here. Like, this movie really shouldn't be made. It's basically bottom of the barrel comedy. The sex stuff is not sexy because obviously it has this weird kind of undertone of, in your brain you're watching it and you're thinking like, so wait, that's like the brain of a child inside a woman's body. There's a lot of weird stuff going on in here. And as a side note, it got me thinking that the movie 13 Going on 30, which is a romantic comedy from the early 2000s, is also super weird. I kind of wonder if like they watched this movie and we're like, oh, this would be okay if it wasn't softcore pornography. Let's just make it like a romantic comedy, and then it's okay to put a child's brain in an adult's body. I mean, I don't know. I guess they did it before with Big, but let's just all collectively agree this concept will never be made again. After about a week or so of wiping my memory that I ever watched this movie, I wanted to dive back into these Category 3 films. So I searched again for another film that Shu Qi was in, and I made sure that she was in a little bit more of it this time. And I watched a film called Sex and Zen 2. This movie, in my opinion, is kind of what you want from a sex comedy. There's a lot of self-awareness to the stupidity in this, and it keeps the movie pretty fun. I'll just run down some of the plot points so you can kind of understand what I mean by stupidity. There's a rich guy who works out his junk all day so he can be an awesome lover. He dresses his daughter like a boy, gives her a chastity belt, and a scholar who finds out that she's a girl when looking at her naked accidentally falls into her and gets his junk chomped off by her mechanical chastity belt that has teeth. Then that guy gets a mechanical penis that spits out fog attached to himself to replace his old penis. And this penis, as it turns out, is actually like Chekhov's gun. It's Chekhov's penis. The penis spits out a fog that comes back and has a very important part in the plot of this film later on. There is also this shape-shifting demon played by Shu Qi, who steals people's life energy by boning them to death, which is kind of, the device of the film that gets people to have sex often. I do think the setting of ancient China and the fact that many of the characters are based in like real Chinese literature actually does in some way keep this movie mildly respectable. If you watch people doing sexy stuff in ancient Chinese clothing, it can kind of automatically elevate your ability to believe that you're watching art. I guess it's like those romance novels in the supermarket where they're like set in like, I don't know, pirate times, but it's really just people doing it. Yeah, that's kind of what this is. The climax of this movie is, I thought, pretty good. I really liked it on an intellectual level. Shu Qi as the demon and Loretta Lee, who is the protagonist daughter, she studied the sucking energy from a Buddhist sutra. So she ends up being able to match this demon in a battle of sex, where whoever orgasms first loses. And this is, sounds silly when I say it out loud, but this is a pretty well done scene. And there's tension. It's satisfying to the plot, like it makes all, kind of ties the whole film together. And, on a sexy scale, I'm not gonna lie, this is a 10 out of 10. Great concept and well filmed and well done. I was pleasantly surprised with Sex and Zen too. So after watching both of these films, I realized I can't really make a video just with two, so I need to watch a third film to kind of round this whole video out. So the third Category 3 film that I decided to watch as research for making this video and for no other reason was Forbidden Sex and Chopsticks 2, which is interesting that I picked this one because it wasn't intentional, but all three of these films are made by the same director. I had no idea. I guess he's kind of like the GOAT of these weird Hong Kong sex comedies. And yeah, so congratulations to that guy. And the other funny thing about the films that I picked is that they all happen to be sequels for some reason, and I never watched the first one, which, you don't really need to. With these kind of films, I think they kind of stand alone and do what they need to do by themselves. So this movie, Forbidden Sex and Chopsticks 2, is made in 2009. And immediately, the first thing that I noticed was that sexy technology has taken a great leap forward in the 13 years since Sex and Zen 2. We've got HD video, and the director had the idea to also cast a lot of actresses that are also Japanese AV girls. The plot of this movie is that a perverse rich guy is obsessed with sex, and it kind of warps his brain. So he starts doing kind of messed up stuff. He kills people to take their wives. He tries to force his wives to have sex with his servants. There's some weird scenarios in this film, like when he injures his friend to marry his wife, and he has sex with her in front of him, and he's in a full body cast, and he's like all mangled and messed up, and it keeps kind of cutting back and forth between the sex and then this weird like mangled dude who's been given an aphrodisiac, and he's like acting all like weird and gross. It's kind of like the director wants to make you feel guilty for being horny, which actually is kind of a theme in this film. So he's like cutting back between like boobs and like this gross face, and it's kind of interesting that this director's doing that. But it's also like not explicit enough, so it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on until a little bit later. Later there's a scene where a woman is pleasuring herself and a guy's like getting whipped, and she's watching it and she's like really likes it. So it's kind of hard to know, like, is this like some weird like masochistic thing that the director really likes, or is he trying to make us uncomfortable on purpose? Later we find out that it's the latter, because the ending of this movie is actually kind of poignant. Basically, this servant who has been plotting revenge on these libertines gives everybody this crazy aphrodisiac, and they all have sex with each other to the point of death. It's pretty disgusting. The deaths are very exaggerated, and it's goofy enough that the movie suddenly kind of transitions into this like horror comedy, which is a genre that I love. So I was actually pretty happy with it, where I was watching the film and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not just watching a stupid sex movie. I'm actually watching a horror comedy, which is less weird. The theme of this movie ends up being that, you know, getting obsessed with sex and lust is dangerous, and it will lead to your downfall. So it's kind of trying to be a little uplifting, even though the movie is softcore pornography. You know, I wasn't expecting that with a movie that started out where a guy and a woman are swinging on a swing and she's shooting grapes out of her vagina. You know, I didn't expect that I was gonna get a message from this film. What is my thesis overall about these Category 3 films that I watched? Whether or not they're interesting kind of tends to lie in whether or not they're trying to do something beyond just showing sex. When the movies get tied up in just showing the sex, they actually get a little bit boring. But also, on the other hand, if there was no sex in these movies, they would also be a little bit boring. It's kind of like there's two things that are being done pretty mediocrely. The sex is like, you know, softcore, kind of just whatever. And the comedies are like, you know, kind of silly and stupid and not that great of movies. But when you put them together, it kind of works if you get the right balance right. It's like if you put French fries on pizza. Like, those two things probably don't need to be together, but if you get the right balance, it can be an interesting guilty pleasure. So that's what you need to do when you're making one of these movies, is you need to find the right balance between the sex and the plot. These are dumb movies. I think overthinking them and trying to overanalyze them and going into the shots and all this stuff is a little bit of a mistake. But I would be lying if I didn't say there is something genuinely fun about these movies, and there is a lot of technical mastery that you can tell goes into making them when you watch them. And also, I gotta say, I kind of think that a lot of bad movies would be a lot better if we just put more sex scenes in them. I think you know, sex scenes make bad movies easier to watch. Which I think is kind of the thesis of the people that were financing these films, is like, well, I mean, you know, these movies are kind of low budget crap, but let's put a bunch of sex scenes in it and have a bunch of naked women in it, and, you know, then people will want to go see it, which is not a bad strategy, which I think we could probably bring back a little bit, but what do I know? Let me know in the comments what you think of these Category 3 erotic comedies. If you have any that you've seen that you like, let me know in the comments, because I'm okay to watch more of these films for research purposes. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about Volcano. Bye-bye.